So we're going to run through two personas today. I'm logged in here as a lady called Julie, and Julie is my customer. She's logged into the portal. She's going to log the support case and review some of the other offerings. And I've also logged in over here as a gentleman called John Jason, and he is my customer service agent. So he's going to sit there, take this case, and run it through its life cycle. So obviously we talked this morning, we talked a lot about ServiceNow being omni-channel. I'm going to concentrate today on the portal. No one wants a boring demo of me sending emails around the place or me phoning someone up. So obviously it's omni-channel. We'll concentrate today on the portal. I don't have the virtual agent actually installed for CSM here. Maybe we'll look at the ITSM one so you can see what that looks like. But obviously there's lots of different ways for your customers to engage with you and get those tickets actually into the system. You can also bubble up things like service catalogs. I don't know if you guys are thinking about making your service offering a tool sort of packaged that way, offer out services, so I can log in and request a site visit, request a performance tune request.
Not just yet.
That's sort of that curve. Okay. And again, you can use it depending on your industry to store documentation for downloading, licenses for downloads. It should be that single one-stop shop for your customers to interact with you in terms of your services, the documentation, and so forth. So I've set up quite a simple one today. Obviously, people that already have this have portals. I imagine that look different to this, similar to this. I remember some of your use cases around reporting on the portals and so forth. We can look at knowledge-based articles. I've got community posts, but they're not being at all prescriptive here. Obviously, the way you build the service portal really is there to suit the way you want to offer that end-user experience to your customers and to present your services outwards. Some people have very simple service portals. Some people have very complex service portals. As mentioned this morning, as we move towards the sort of the conversational interface, you'll move further and further away from a traditional portal, and your customers will be interacting through things like social media, through their phones and so forth, in a sort of a conversational type way. But I've kept it quite simple today. But again, the branding is obviously the Highmetric branding, but as you're probably aware, this would be an extension really of your corporate branding. The best service portals, I don't even know I'm on ServiceNow. I look like I've come directly from your website, from your e-commerce site, whatever it might be, and then suddenly I'm on the support portal. It knows who I am, so this is important. There's are you guys B2B or you business? So there's a B2B customer service management and there's a B2C. So I'm a B2B here, so for me to use this I have to have an account. Not a license, but an account, so I need to log in. If you're doing consumer grade stuff like Virgin Media or whoever it might be, obviously in the consumer space, you might bubble up certain levels of information without even the need to log in, downloading the price list, whatever it might be, you don't care, anyone can see that. But this is B2B, so it knows I'm logged in as Julie, so it's going to know straight away, my phone number, the company I work for and so forth, so you can actually present quite a good end user experience by actually taking away a lot of the keystrokes and a lot of the button presses and so forth. So let's jump in. So let's look quickly at the community. I'm in the grease there, yeah. So super simple, we won't dwell on it. Everyone's used a community forum before with some description on the internet, but it's exactly as you'd imagine, broken down into rooms based on, I guess, your products, your services, models, versions, whatever it might be, moderated by the service provider or by community champions, whatever it might, whichever approach you might want to take. All rich HTML pieces like your knowledge-based articles, so you can embed videos, you can embed web links, pictures, and so forth along that line as well. Is anyone here currently building or have built a knowledge base? You've got a knowledge base. I know the answer for a lot of people, so asking the right questions. Have you started embedding rich content into it? Do you have videos? Do you have all that sort of good stuff you might see on a website? There are some advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, you can't search a video. So if I'm searching for something and there's something in that video that might be indicative of the solution, that's obviously not going to work. But it's flexible and it's the sort of experience people are used to. It's a sort of experience they'd have in their home life, the ability in their sort of consumer space as well. So I'm logged in as Julie, and she actually works for a company called Boxio, and they are a networking company in effect. So you'll see a lot of the pieces I run over in the next 20 or so minutes can be around that particular area. So I've got a few different types of routers I sell out here, and a few sort of questions over and answers around various different post content from questions, blogs, videos, documents. I mean, it's a really good way also to communicate out to your customers. Maybe your senior folk or your visionaries want to write a blog on the community post that people can subscribe to. It's a really good way of communicating. And also really it might not be as relevant for you guys, but also a really good ticket deflection tool, reducing your ticket load by, Are your contracts per ticket base, or are they more sort of a level of service? Or
Yeah, all sorts of service.
so if you could reduce your ticket load, that would be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so again, a good way to sort of, if you're a managed service provider, maybe you don't want your customers directly talking to each other. Maybe that would be a bit strange, but certainly within the domain of a customer. Are you going to be domain separated, or is it just CSM?
Just CSM.
Just CSM. Okay, so it's not sort of true outsourcing in terms of. Okay, understood. Right here, let's go back. So again, these tickets can come in any particular way, and a lot of people here probably have these e-forms already on their portal for submission of tickets. You can notice, obviously, we can pre-populate fields where the information comes from. In fact, we know who Julie is. And also, that's really useful in terms of reducing keystrokes and so forth. Also, as we understand, if I put 60 fields here, no one's going to use it, right? They're just going to phone you up as they did 5 years ago, and you're never going to break away from that sort of more old-fashioned paradigm. So let me start filling this in. I have a problem today with a reporting suite that I offer out to these guys. Flow 6 reports. So straight away I've put an integration here, and it's a simple widget, so it's nothing complex here. I've not built anything. I'm not just drag and drop it from the widget library. There's just contextual help. So as I'm typing ahead there in the subject line, it's going to the knowledge base and bringing back relevant documentation, knowledge base articles, community posts if you want as well. So that's a really good example of a process integration between knowledge management and case management. A lot of people sort of build knowledge bases, build CMDBs, and they sort of just sit there. It's sort of like a tick box exercise. The best way is to use them to enrich the actual customer-facing processes like case. So here, I'm also almost forcing this person, Julie, in a polite way, say, okay, you're having an issue with slow reports. Here are some related articles. Have a look at these guys. Are they going to help you with that problem? Again, trying to promote self-service and deflect the ticket away. So today, no, that has not helped for Julie. So when I submit that case, again, this is going to be my main point of interaction in terms of the way I now progress this ticket through its workflow with my customer. Again, getting away from that paradigm, it's almost like throwing it over the wall, and then I'm going to phone you up and say, have you started? Not yet. Email you, how's it going? So I can actually use this to manage both the submission of my case and also the updates. Are people having success with this approach? Are people using this view to communicate with you? Okay. Obviously, knowing your background here, are people starting to use it in the chat tools as well, or is that not so much yet? Actually integrating in this sort of conversational piece with something like Skype for Business, for argument's sake.
We'd like to.
It all makes sense, doesn't it, for you guys? Yeah, Teams. It's got a native integration with Teams for the virtual agent as well. It's worth looking at. But obviously, I've got it here on the portal, so I can, as Julie can communicate. Hurry up, whatever it might be. And this is, again, because it's your touch point with the customers, you choose really from a process perspective how much information to share with them. So I've got, just as an example, things like the case number, the status. I've got my SLA hours. You might want to put the SLA performance on there and so forth. Especially for an IT outsourcer, you might want to consider putting some dashboards and reports here as well to see we'll show the customer how you're performing against their contract. Do you have contractual SLAs? Okay, so it's awesome. So a really good way to score how you're doing against that in this particular view as well. The ability to attach tickets, grab location things and so forth. But okay, so I've now submitted a case as Julie, so let's jump into the back end. As John. You guys got your reports yet onto the portal? So you're still using the sort of reporting as you see now in the main client? Because that was one of your requirements long term, wasn't it, to have those reports available through the portal and the widget?
Yes. Yeah, we'd like to give customers more information easier rather than us having to generate reports, take them out,
email them across, yeah, absolutely. So.
Especially for our base managed service customers, we'd like to see a more portal-based
Yeah.
solution for them to go to and service themselves.
And because it's a read-only action, they don't need a license to do it as well. So obviously, creating a report is another thing, but just to view a report you put up there should be no licensing implications.
Creating categorizations and stuff.
I mean, think how much time you could save if you went across that.
Yeah, so it's going to be one of our slides some point
Okay,
to change that.
awesome. Sounds good. Okay, so John has logged in. So let's have a look at what we can see here. First of all, there's this ability using, and I'm not sure if anyone has gone for performance analytics or is using performance analytics at all. Okay, we won't dwell on it, but there's something called Case Spotlight, which can use some of that machine learning to actually bubble up the most important cases to the top. So in effect, what it does is it scores them on a bunch of metrics that you set up. So you can see here, if I open up, and it's someone with a higher score. So 1300. So the concept here being that whether it be a VIP customer, location, high priority, product that might need a recall, as you saw from the special handling notes there, you can actually bubble those up to the top of the queue. So it's almost like queue automation. Let's have a look at my cases. So with CSM, you can use something called special handling notes. So if you build into your contracts for your customers certain pieces around that VIP flag maybe, it's around really optional extras in contracts that you can use to capture the agent's attention. So you can see here we have a piece around urgent issues and changes in entitlement as well. So just two pieces I can see straight away, grabs my attention before I start working on the case. It's important when you're sort of maintaining a relationship with or working for external customers, because obviously contractually, your performance and the way you service them is very important for your bottom line. Obviously, it's very important to do your internal folk as well, but it's obviously more important to look at the external people. So just assign this to me. Cool. So this is a traditional view. We'll look at the agent workspace view slightly later on. So a few bits and pieces to be aware of, and one of the reasons that ServiceNow are changing towards that agent workspace type approach is you'll notice that I do need to do a lot of scrolling to get to the information top to bottom, and that's been one of the major feedbacks in terms of the quality of the GUI, in the fact that things like the SLA, probably the most important piece, is right at the bottom of the screen, where it should probably be front and center. So we'll look at what that looks like in agent workspace. So a few core pieces, obviously I think will be quite interesting for you as a managed service provider. I know you guys are using it as well. The ability to record time against a case is an approach you're going to take, so I can log in as an engineer and say, okay. And again, I can drive this task list based on contractual definitions. Task work, time work, let's say 1 day reviewed. So you can choose to do that manually. You can do that automatically. CSM, ServiceNow, actually provides something called a time capture portal as well, where people can log in and actually do their timesheets through a portal if required, and log those to cases, to projects, to accounts, and so forth. So we haven't got any here, but also skill-based assignment. So you can also, when we're talking about automatic routing in terms of assignment, prioritization, and categorization, you can use people's skills. So if it comes in for a certain product, like it could have come in here for my Appy Corporation Analytics Reporting Suite, it can be routed to the appropriate person with those skills. Obviously, that's useful in HR world as well. Obviously, HR generalist versus specialist. So you can route cases based on skills. It's not something that I see as much as things like specific customers having specific agents or specific agents specific times a day, or geos or so forth, or things like availability for field services, or things like location for field services. So you can do based on have you looked at the central dispatch or the map view of field services? A bit like a sort of a taxi driver's approach. You can see where all your people are, where the incidents or the work orders are, and you can actually use location to drive assignment as well. So skills is one piece of that. You can load in people's skills, whether they be field services skills, HR skills, whatever they might be. Just like you see, it's just traditional ITSM. You can have a one-to-many relationship with the SLA. So I've got here priority 3 or 4 resolution in 5 days. I can see my progress. It's easy. It's transparent. It's easy to report on. There's people making a lot of noise outside. And again, you can have that one-to-many relationships. You might have SLAs that are driven by special customers, whether they be special locations, times of the day, business hours versus 24/7. So lots of different ways to drive SLAs. Are you guys live with your SLAs now?
We are, yeah.
How are you slicing and dicing them? Is it per customer or fairly generic? Or?
As they've been sold.
That sounds like a very political line, like you said that before.
A bit more standard than they used to be. So there's some anomalies there.
Yeah, it's a good way to drive, as a service provider, to standardise your service offering is a really clever approach.
So we're trying to standardise everything that we're doing.
Yeah, I see a lot of nodding. I think standardisation would be a good plan.
As you saw from the legacy, there was hundreds of different SLAs and different things.
I do remember, yes.
Yeah, we brought them down a bit, but it's still, it's not quite where we want it, but it's moving that direction.
And I guess by natural attrition, as you recontract and so forth, you can drive people towards that approach.
Renewals, we're trying to update certain credits, SLAs, all of those things, to try and bring them back to uniform state.
Who are you paying?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely one of them. One of the pieces. So also the ability, and we won't run through this right now, but the ability to escalate a case which has an approval workflow. So if it would be by a manager or whoever it might be, you can actually say this case requires special attention. That goes through an approval workflow. Have you done escalations? Escalation path and built into a ServiceNow workflow. Awesome. Does that work well? Any challenges around it?
Yeah, no, it works really well because most of the cases just go to our admin team. But
Okay.
if someone escalates, the customer has the ability to escalate, and then it will just go to our team leader for review, and it just means that special attention is given, and then it's dealt with accordingly. And it might be that actually sometimes they've got a bit overzealous with the escalate button, and other times it's a genuine, but don't actually get that many. So.
Okay. Have you had to attach a manual process to it, like who can escalate, the process to go through? So literally anyone can choose to escalate and it goes for approval and it's either yes or no. Is escalation something you've considered yet? Was it something you were shown in your initial demonstration?
Yeah, it is something that was shown, but we've got a very manual way of doing stuff at the moment. We're doing a straight rip out and replace of our old tool, and then once we've got it bedded in, we'll then look at doing the finer tuning and doing the nicer bits like that.
What do you, if you don't mind me asking, what are you currently using?
I'm much embarrassed to say, Sunrise.
Oh, okay. We've certainly seen Sunrise move to ServiceNow a few times actually.
Yeah,
Okay.
not surprised.
Yes, quite, absolutely. Okay, so another big part of external support versus internal support is around contract management. So some of the people, one of the biggest challenges I get back is almost that, Dom, we don't know if we're meant to, supporting this person, what level of support they've got, if they're still, inside that support window. So again, in terms of process integration with CSM, you want to bring, as you've done with the knowledge management at the front end, the contract management into front and center when it comes to the way we are supporting these people to make sure we are adhering to those contracts. And obviously, if you're going above and beyond every single time, maybe this person needs a higher tier contract. So without or on the same screen, it's very easy for me to see the contract that Boxio have. And also underneath that contract have a one-to relationship with entitlements, what exactly that entitles them to. So in this case, priority support, gold tier, silver tier, whatever it might be as well. So you can actually integrate process-wise contract management into CSM as well, which is a sort of a long-term process. A lot of contracts are stored on pieces of paper in filing cabinets. So you've got to take a different approach, but it's absolutely worthwhile. Because then obviously you can automate business rules. So you can say, okay, if this is past their end date, then there's a pop-up, a grace period, and then no service. So you can actually start building business rules based on exactly what is in their contract and driving SLAs and entitlements and so forth. So let me just move across to the Agent Workspace then, which is obviously the piece that was launched in London and now front and centre in Madrid. So the concept with Agent Workspace is a more modern UI. It's the concept of bringing everything together, consolidating it rather than that long top to bottom view you're used to with the ServiceNow forms. It supports various different ITSM and CSM processes, so you've got things like the walk-up experience, obviously case management, you've got incident management, and in Madrid as well they brought in the ITOM piece around alert management as well. So if you're automatically monitoring servers, switches, I know you guys are doing all that sort of stuff, you can consolidate that against CI's assets and incidents if required. So a more modern lighter view, and it really brings in a couple of things outside the consolidation. It's this concept of tab browsing, or working on multiple tickets or lists at the same time. So as to open up a couple of these guys. So in effect, what I can do is I can have multiple tickets in my workspace and flip between them quickly and easily. Again, really bringing everything front and center. We talked about pieces like SLAs being at the bottom, and the most important information needs to be where we can see it in the middle. So we have this concept of tabs in the middle, tabs on the top as well, as you can see, and bringing in various different UI widgets. So in terms of things like an SLA view at the top here, the timeline that we're used to. Excuse me. A piece around Julie Lewis as well. Obviously, we know she works for Box here, so almost, obviously, Ian talked about CRM to CSM. This is almost around account management here, so we're not looking so much at the individual case, but we're looking at the health of the account of Boxio, how close to their renewal date they are, overall health status, how many open cases. Almost a piece you want to see as an account manager before you go for that contract renewal. You want to understand exactly how healthy the account is. So there are some CRM-y type account management pieces in the tool to support the service management as well, those aspects. Everything on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side here really alludes to a lot of the stuff that Adam said this morning around things like similarity, correlation, agent intelligence. So bringing that information and knowledge management again directly against the piece that you're actually working on from the cases view. So agent intelligence, you can see it's brought back one piece of information around a major case, around a power unit recall based on this particular asset or service I'm offering out to this customer. Agent assist, and this again is things like knowledge management, similar tickets, the correlation piece. Again, you could get this information in the traditional view, but you'd need to go to several different pages to bring it together. It's just a consolidation approach. See attachments and templates as well with a slightly different view on it. The metrics piece is actually quite interesting. This is how the spotlight piece is driven and how performance analytics is driven as well. So if you look at a few of these pieces that we can say that we actually want to measure. So things like assignment group duration, case state transitions. This is almost a life cycle of your case from start to finish and how long each individual piece is actually going to take or has taken. We can bring together things like interactions. So things like, for argument's sake, emails, phone calls that you've had with this account, with this customer around this particular case or similar. So in effect, with the agent workspace, we're bringing everything together, especially handling notes and so forth. But really, I did want to make this session relatively interactive. I didn't just want to go end to end. So really, are there any questions or anything specifically you want to see today as you start CSM, and obviously you guys now go up the maturity curve?
With the knowledge and service on the right side there on the details page, is that opening up as a tab rather than in that agent workspace?
So the knowledge management will be aligned as a tab within the case related knowledge.
That's one of the chief things we have, people finding it and then popping up another one and then have to put it onto a different screen to read the knowledge while they're trying to...
You should have, so let's go back to this traditional view. Again, I haven't configured this exactly the same way, but if I look at, let's open up my incidents. It's obviously just a different form. Anyway, let's go back to the cases. So you're in the traditional form view, you're looking for knowledge to be on the same form as the case, in effect, related to that case.
Well, they can get it through the show related fields or whatever that search bit is called, but
Yeah.
actually opening up and being able to follow it. I think at the moment, from the things that we've had, they're kind of popping up in the browser tab or something like that.
So this is the view you currently have, something along those lines. And when you click something, you don't want it to open up. How would you like it to open up as a separate?
Yeah, so at the moment, they can be right-clicking, opening a new browser tab in Chrome or whatever, and putting it into different screens so they can follow what we're doing here. I think it's a bit, before we had it all in a different application together,
So
and then you kind of just go between the two. And
that's-
actually having it in one place is nice, but actually the usability isn't quite as easy as it was
Okay,
before.
I see what you're saying. And that's why we have Ian with us. Ian, do you know if it will open up in a separate tab in Agent Workspace? I don't think it does.
I haven't seen that demoed.
So basically, we want this article to open up in a separate tab in their workspace rather than.
Yeah, create workspace and see.
So be able to follow it.
Why not? We'll try it from Agent Workspace.
It's quite often our guys will put multiple monitors, they'll be on a customer system where they're troubleshooting, doing that, and then they're trying to update the case, we're also trying to look at knowledge or look at entitlements, and effectively they're running out of screen real estate to
There's an article there.
that jumping between a lot of different screens.
So there you go. It opens up in line.
So that, yeah,
That's in line. That's in line.
Nothing like a live test. Yeah, so that would work for you. So you can copy and paste from here.
We found the tab issue in multiple cases. Typically, you've got agents also who work with multiple customers.
Yes.
And it was a real pain. You go out and you lose where you are or whatever. So the tabs work much better. As you say, there's that kind of hierarchy of tabs right at the top.
Yeah.
You can see that there, and then obviously the tabs within the piece here. And I think it will then go down one more level as well, won't it? I think if you keep going.
Yeah, absolutely.
The customer level. So yeah, I think that's been a big change.
yeah, and I think that's a much better view for us, I think,
Yeah.
as well. So getting the guys to jump between lots of different customers,
Correct.
trying to get hold of the customer, they can't
Yeah.
get hold of it, they'll just park that ticket for a bit, and then
Yeah.
hopefully they'll have multiple windows, getting that visualization.
And to be honest, your feedback is one of the main drivers right behind Agent Workspace to make it a better way to work.
Yeah.
Without having to go between different screens and that sort of everything in the same place.
That single pane of glass really does make it easier.
Absolutely. It's a much more modern view.
That experience you can give the agent is far more beneficial than all these different screens, different systems.
Agreed.
And the nice thing is it doesn't really require any sort of implementation time as well. It's almost one of those switch on and go pieces. Excellent stuff. Look forward to seeing it. So anything else specifically around, obviously you guys are just starting out around CSM?
Nothing specific, I don't think. Alex has already given us a really good run through of ITSM versus CSM on a couple of occasions.
Okay.
And he goes to run through this workspace scenario half hour before we start doing
Okay, good stuff.
the session. So really impressed with it. I really like the look of it. It looks like more refined than
So you think you'll probably implement that from the get-go for your agents?
yeah, we are on London though, so we're going live on London. So yeah, as we go to Madrid, we'll get that up and running pretty quick.
I suppose at least I'll have a little bit of time to use the traditional ServiceNow and then appreciate the difference.
Funnily enough, the tab approach is exactly what Sunrise uses, but that's probably the only decent bit in there.
Yeah, I mean it's a traditional. I mean the Salesforce use a similar approach to the tab, so it's traditional way of architecting it.
The transition from our old tool to this would have been easier had this have been in the London release. From a fuller experience point of view, because it's a very similar layout and it's a very similar style of working. But everyone's so keen to get the old tool anyway, it would be good to have a bigger break, and then we can reintroduce that in a more structured way.
Yeah. Okay.
That's good. I'm really impressed with that one.
Excellent stuff. Is anyone thinking about integrating any other tools in to enrich the CSM experience that you don't have already? You talked about asset feeds, I think you were saying. And
Yeah, so we've got a couple of feeds in from different systems at the moment, but we're also in the process of upgrading from SolarWinds to ScienceLogic.
okay.
So we were going to do a SolarWinds integration, but obviously that's not happening now. We're going to do the ScienceLogic integration instead.
We've just done a big ScienceLogic integration with ServiceNow for another MSP down in Hampshire, and they're really impressed with that approach. It does have some overlap with some of the ServiceNow ITOM pieces, but CMDB population and so forth, but it's a decent tool, definitely, and it fits well and integrates really well as well.
Yeah.
Is that what you'll be using it for, event management and discovery, or?
Yeah, so initially we were going to just be using it for event management.
Okay.
But we're seeing some use cases for some of our services where we can actually deploy it as a discovery tool for them. Some of our services, we need to go and do an audit on site of customers' equipment, and we're currently paying Cisco quite a lot of money for using the tool that they provide.
Yeah, I'd imagine. Yeah.
Whereas ScienceLogic are more than happy for us to use their tool for free. which is a much
Which is good.
price.
Yeah, free is a good price. We like that. We like free.
Free is a good price. Obviously, only because we're using it elsewhere in the business. But yeah, the idea is that we can then upsell the customer, so we move them from just a break fix contract to a break fix plus monitoring. Right.
Okay.
And from a break fix plus monitoring, we can now up onto a fully managed service.
Okay. And be much more proactive, right? Fix things before they break. So.
And then with looking to put our professional services engineers out onto the field services module as well. That's another PO which is going to Highmetric for.
So one of the extra additions in Madrid is alert management into the workspace as well. So you can now look at your alerts coming from your event tools alongside your cases, alongside the other bits and pieces as well, which is really useful. I think that really closed the gap, adding in alerts as well in terms of, like you say, break fix with monitoring and those sort of MSP type models. Awesome.
Yeah, so it's going to be key for us to drive our business forward.
I suppose while we've got Ian here as well, and I can talk to it a bit, any sort of questions about the roadmap for CSM in terms of what's coming along, anything you'd like to see, anything that you think would improve the experience you're having at the moment? The platform or the process tool? Those are happy customers.
Yeah, to get to that point, yeah. But, I mean, I guess you guys are all familiar. It's basically a 6-monthly roadmap.
Yeah.
Familiar with that? I think we talk somewhat blandly about London and Madrid and New York and whatever, but it's basically the alphabet working our way through. And we were playing a game last night, figuring out what was going to be Q. I'm sure, I think it's probably Quebec or
It is Quebec.
Or,
Quebec has started
City,
appearing on
Quebec
slide
City,
decks now.
I think, yeah. Sometimes Chris does a funny thing. I don't know if he'll do it this afternoon, where he'll does things like London, Manchester, Newark, whatever. But the sort of thing I think to think about it is, if you do have suggestions, there's a bunch of ways of getting that in. We'd love to hear them, and if anyone's interested, there are product advisory councils where people can get involved in. We actually ran our first one here in London last year to try and make sure that we were capturing. They're normally done at Knowledge, so it tends to be a little bit US centric. So we ran around the Now Forum in London last year to make sure we picked up some of the European feedback to help with the prioritisation and the roadmap. There's a bunch more stuff. I mean, probably if I was thinking through the things that Madrid really gave, obviously mobile. Probably aware that there's a native field service application now that's all part and parcel of the CSM. There's some really good automating testing frameworks for the upgrades as well that's available in the core platform that's come through. And obviously you touched on some of the other stuff like the virtual agent, the agent assist, the similarity framework. I think previous version, I think London did the major case piece, which has been very popular. That's worked really well. Are you guys familiar with that one?
That's a really good point, actually. Major issue management and major case management. Have you considered that at all? I don't think we talked about this as you were starting up.
We'd like to. We haven't done it.
Everyone familiar with what that means? So in effect, what you can do, obviously major incident management for ITSM has been around for quite some time, but that's internal comms. So you can use major case management or major issue management to actually do targeted comms to your customers. Hey, we know this is happening, or this product is being recalled, or whatever it might be, and you can send that to, or automatically send a notification to targeted groups of people.
Based on CMDB. Profile. So if it's to do with Cisco router XYZ, it's only those people who have got Cisco router XYZ that then get the communication. So you're not blasting people that it's not relevant to, that are on your Juniper kit or whatever, so it makes a huge difference. And obviously what you're trying to do is that proactive piece, nothing to do with the connectivity, but it's the proactive communications piece that avoids the call center getting slammed by people saying, I've got a problem, and not actually being able to get on and fix the issue.
Yeah, I think the key word is targeted. You're not spamming everyone. You want to select people based on products. Or
That comes in Madrid.
I think major issue.
London, actually.
Yeah, was it London?
Yeah. No, it was London. I think that came in London. They've made a few tweaks to it.
Yeah.
The other area that there's been quite a lot done in both London and again in Madrid is knowledge management. If any of you are thinking about using something called KCS, has anyone come across that before? Knowledge-centered support. So kind of a philosophy, if you like, about how you leverage knowledge, how you curate it, how you ensure quality, how you bring stuff through. So, for example, taking information you've got in case resolutions and turning it into knowledge, information that's in the community and turning it into knowledge, and then the classic sort of thing of knowledge that's being consumed but a case still gets created, flagging it and saying, so why isn't that knowledge avoiding this case creation? Let's go back and create a task for someone to review the knowledge and see whether or not the knowledge should be improved, so that next time the knowledge is able to deliver the answer, if you will, to avoid the case. And then obviously you've got the knowledge quality ratings again, and it might again be, right, if it get less than a 3 out of 5, then again you can create a task and manage that and assign that to the knowledge owners. You can look at how long your knowledge has been there, whether it's been consumed, whether it hasn't been consumed, when it was last updated. So there's a whole bunch of stuff around that. So if you're thinking about that self-service domain and the role that knowledge plays there, there's a lot more tools and capability built into it, and it's what they call version 6 of KCS compliant, which is the kind of the highest level that you can get to in the latest release. So something again that I think is hopefully of interest.
Very good point.
The knowledge management stuff. You can record how often it's consumed.
Yes.
We will also be able to tell from that if it was successful.
Well, we talk about, people sometimes talk about case deflection.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are some reports and so on that you can set up. For example, you have to depend a little bit on your model, but for example, Harry comes in. It's Harry because he's come and done ID and V and come through. Which knowledge he consumes, i.e., you regard, and does he then create a case, say within 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever threshold you want to do, and then run the analytics associated with that. Okay. So that's the type of thing that you look at and try and determine if knowledge is consumed but no case is created. You make the assumption that that's a deflection. If knowledge is consumed but a case is created, then you make it an assumption that it didn't deliver the value. Now, occasionally you'll find he was looking at printer issues and then logs a case about I don't know, routers or something. You think, well, actually, okay, fine, that's a different thing. But most of the time, it's a connected issue, and you can do the analysis. So it's, a lot of the analytics help to do that.
Yeah.
Because as a managed service provider, you want to, unless you're ticket driven, you want to reduce the amount of tickets coming in to make it more efficient. But you want to be able to prove to the customer at the end of the contract.
Exactly. So you can report back. You could report back and say, you've logged. Because I think that you make a really interesting point, and I think it's a huge cultural point. In the old days, pre-self-service, all the things we're talking about is how many cases, first call resolution, mean time to resolution, average handle time, number of touches. It's everything about once a case has been created. Yeah. If self-service is working, you haven't created the case. Yeah. So then you have to say, knowledge consumed, how many things we fixed before you knew about it, all of those sort of things. So I think it's a very different piece. And I think you've got to be careful within the organisation as well, because if you've done a great job with self-service, your volumes may have gone down, but there's obviously an ongoing requirement to create the knowledge and so on to keep it that way. So it is a cultural thing, and I think again historically, knowledge was power. Individuals had knowledge in their head, and when you go to self-service, you need that knowledge digitised within the platform, and you have to have incentivization and carrot and stick associated with the teams to actually. To drive that, to deliver you the business outcome and the customer, outcome that you're looking for.
I think also a really strong process behind in terms of the quality and the technical accuracy. So with ServiceNow, you're not just dumping something into a wiki like you would do with a Confluence or whatever. It needs to be approved, multiple stages, technically approved from a quality perspective, and you can set it for a certain life cycle. This will be published, retired in 6 months, or published up to version 4 as well. So there is a proper knowledge management publishing workflow as well. It's not just a brain dump into a piece of paper or a horrible shared drive full of a bunch of PDFs. So it's really.
But I would encourage you, if you guys are into knowledge and trying to get some of those sort of quotes best practices, look it up. KCS. It's definitely worth something. Especially there's quite a lot of. It's developed by something called the Consortium for Service Innovation, and it's basically a not-for-profit of a bunch of people who have kind of tried to develop best practices in that arena, and there's actually quite a lot of free information and material on their website, either Service Innovation or KCS Academy. Gives you quite a lot of ideas around what you need to do culturally, sort of measurements you should look for, that kind of thing. So I definitely would advise that. And then, the latest and best practices are now embedded within the system. So it's one of those sort of self-reinforcing things. You can't do one without the other, right? So it helps you to drive those processes if you do decide to adopt some of them.
Yeah, awesome. So, I mean, I think we need to go to ITSM quite soon, but are there any other questions? Ian actually comes from a customer originally before he went to ServiceNow, so did one of the successful implementation of CSM. If anyone has the implementation customers.
In my presentation, we were one of the first we actually went live with Geneva, and I think we were customer number 3 or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been on a really good journey there, and caught up with the guys actually at Knowledge, and they're just about to go up to Madrid actually, so they're looking forward. So they haven't been using Agent Workspace, and it was one of the things that we found frustrating was the long scrolls and that kind of thing.
A lot of people did.
Like, but that was one of the things we didn't like. So yeah, they're really excited about moving to that.
Awesome. Okay. Well, cool. Thanks everyone.